So I'd like to introduce you to the lesser known sister of vLookup. vLookup is much more commonly known and used, but many folks don't know about HLOOKUP. Very similar, but just not used as much. But it can come in handy, especially if your data is arrayed in a horizontal fashion versus a vertical fashion. So um, the H stands for horizontal, so horizontal lookup. And then with vLookup, the V stands for vertical lookup. And so why would you need HLOOKUP? And here's why. So typically, your data is presented in a column fashion, a vertical fashion, if you will. So you'll see here, column A has all of the dates arranged. Column B has all of this corresponding sales, and column C all the transactions. If your data is arrayed like this, then you'll want to use vLookup for what we're about to show you. However, sometimes the data is not presented in this fashion. It's presented in this fashion, where the data is arranged horizontally or by row. It's not very common, but it does occur, especially if you have systems that are spitting out data reports. They will, on occasion, come out in this format. So that's where HLOOKUP can come in handy. So let's say my boss has given me this a set of dates here, a set of 10 dates, and said I need to know the corresponding sales and transactions for these dates, and I need it in 5 minutes. Well, if your report was actually this small, it probably wouldn't be that difficult to do. All you'd have to do is go here. So you have January 12th, you go to the table, look up January 12th over here, and you could just copy and paste the values. Not a big deal. But let's say that this table here, instead of only 3 rows, it has 500, and instead of maybe 50 columns, you have 1,000. And then correspondingly, let's say that your report here has 500 rows of data. So this is not something you could do using copy and paste, certainly not within 5 minutes. But using HLOOKUP, you can actually do this in less than 5 seconds. So let's look at HLOOKUP and its components. So there are 4 components to the formula of HLOOKUP. The first is the lookup value. This is the known. So this is what you know already. In this case, we know the date. Okay, so that's going to be our lookup value. The second component is the table array. And this is basically where the data resides. In this particular case, the data resides on the table tab and resides in the in columns 1 through 3. Next is the row index. And so this is basically telling Excel which row is the data you want. So you're going to give Excel a known value, which is the date. You're going to say, go find this date in the table. Okay, so let's say it finds January 1st for you, and then you're going to tell it, okay, which row, once I find that date, which row do you want me to retrieve for you? So in this case, sales will be row 2, and transaction will be row 3. The last component is the range lookup. This is sort of confusing for some folks, but it's actually pretty basic. So what this is asking is if you want Excel to go out and find an exact match for this values, for the known value. And if it can't find the exact match, it's going to return an NA, so just an error code basically. The other option is to tell it, okay, I want you to go out, try to find the exact match, but if you can't, give me an approximate match. So let's just say, for instance, it goes out, it looks for January 12th, and for whatever reason, January 12th is not on that list, but January 11th is. It would actually go and say, okay, so maybe he wants January 11th instead. So it will return the sales and the total transactions for January 11th. Now we know that all the dates exist in our data report, so we're not going to use the function to tell it, go give me an approximate value, although it would probably be fine because the dates do exist. But it's just good to know what that range lookup is for. So let's get started. As always, you'll start your formula with an equal sign, and we will type in HLOOKUP, open parentheses, and it tells you what you need. So first we need the lookup value, which if you recall is the known value. In this case, it's the date. So we'll click on that cell, comma. Now we need the table array. Okay, and instead of highlighting columns like you would with the VLOOKUP, we're going to highlight rows. And it's very important that the first column of your table must be where the known values reside. So in this case, date. We have to make sure a date's always in that first row. Okay. Now let's say for whatever reason date was down here and sales and transactions were above it. You would just need to sort of rearrange your table so that the date does fall on the top. So we'll highlight the first row. We'll left click, drag down, and we'll highlight all 3 rows. So that gives Excel the table that you are looking for. Comma, row index. So the first item we want are the sales. Sales fall in the 1, 2, the second row. So we're going to put in the number 2. And we want the exact match. So you can either type in false or you can just double click on false there and close parentheses. And there it is. And so let's double check this. So 1/12/2014 should be 3775. And it is 3775. Okay. Now with vLookup you could simply drag this down. But here's the catch. With HLOOKUP, if you drag this down, you'll see what happens. You get an error code. Why? That's because if you look at the difference between these two, the A3 is fine. The problem is the table. It's changed the table rows for you. So now instead of table 1 through 3, it's table 2, 3, 4. How do we fix that? Well, let's delete that first. We need to reference these values and make them constants. And so what you do is you click on the component, you click F4, and you'll see this little dollar sign. So anytime you see the dollar signs, that means that it's a permanent value. So no matter where you drag this value or copy and paste it, it's always going to use that same table array. We also want to do that with A, and we don't need to do it with the sales column per se. But if we try to drag this formula over to the total transactions, it's going to change this A to a B. All right, so we need to reference this as well. So we click on F4. Now, we don't want the row 2 to be the constant. We want A. We want it to remain A, but we want it to, once we drag it down, we do want it to capture the corresponding row. So we're going to keep clicking F4 until the dollar sign disappears from the 2. There you go. And that should do it. So click that, and we'll drag this down. And it gives you all the sales for those. Now, we are going to drag this over. Now, it's not correct yet, and the reason is, if you'll notice, the row index number remained the same, so it remained 2. But if you recall, on the table, transaction falls on row 3, so we need to change that. So we're simply going to change that to 3. Actually, put a little extra stuff in there for us, so make that 3. And this is currently formatted. We'll change the formatting here. Okay, and then we can just drag that down. That's it.